Welcome to another episode of Red and Black, where your conservatism is not just the color that you're used to. I'm Lenny McAllister, and everything you need to know about how the world is still not quite back to normal is the fact that a dude that plays Ant-Man was named the sexiest man alive. Now, I gotta be honest, I'm afraid to even go into anything that resembles this is the epitome of why size doesn't matter. But that just is, I don't want to touch that. Melanie, I'm going to leave it alone. But I'm sure you probably have something to say because you do this.
This is one of the rare times when I did not mind doing show prep. Just saying. I haven't been happy with the world's sexiest man choice since Idris Elba in 2018. And I couldn't remember what year that was. So of course, I had to go back and review each and every picture carefully and analytically for the show. But listen, Paul Rudd is super cute, but sexy? No. Along with John Legend, like, why do they keep picking these, like, you know, very kind of feminine, soft-looking dudes? And by the way, Jason Momoa.
He's a Marvel superhero, Melanie. He's
Ant-Man. You cannot be Ant-Man and be sexy. There's just a number of reasons you just can't. No, not Ant-Man. Aquaman, yes. Ant-Man.
Aquaman's not Marvel.
Black women love Jason Momoa. What's that all about?
Because he's hot. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, but why specifically him, though? I mean, I like him too. He's a cool guy, but like, I just don't get it. It's just kind of weird to me.
Because he's smoking, okay? Hot like fire. That's why. I'm saying he is. Have you seen the dude? He's got sex, just bam, bam. The hair, the jawline. Yeah. And he looks like a man. Even with the long hair, he looks like a man. Women are attracted to men that look like if we were walking down the street and we ran into some trouble, he could handle that situation. That's the thing. So
hold on.
Jason Momoa
Before I go to the other two, Melanie, I'm going to tell you somebody that has been handling his business in multiple Marvel movies over the last 10 years. You ready for it?
Ant-Man.
Ant-Man. Just put it out there. Jeff.
You say so.
Should we all be offended that People Magazine did this, or should we just say it's broken? It's broken. But look, there was back in the day, people would kind of look forward to that, like they would look forward to the Sports Illustrated, swimsuit edition, and now that's just that's gone off the rails because there's not even a swimsuit in the swimsuit edition. It's just people hiding their nakedness. So should us men in America be offended that Paul Rudd, Ant-Man, has been deemed the sexiest man alive? I know you came in second place, so you're not as mad as the rest of us. But what say you?
I mean, before I even go on that, I'm going to point something out. I mean, when it comes to Ant-Man, people always pay attention to how he shrinks down. He doesn't just shrink down, though. He can grow. I'm just going to put that out there. So that might be one reason why women might like him. But Paul Rudd, the thing is, I like Paul Rudd. I think he's cool. I like him in the movies that I've seen him in. I think he's a great actor. I don't really care about the sexiest man alive because I don't pay attention to that because I'm into women. But whatever. I mean, if women think he's sexy, then that means that there's something about him that is sexy other than just being masculine, I guess. I don't know. He doesn't come off as feminine to me. I mean, he's not like masculine like Jason Momoa is, but he doesn't come off as feminine to me. Like, especially with some of what we see out there today. He ain't that bad.
Listen, he's a cutie, but he's not sexy. I mean, he's cute, very cute.
That makes sense.
But not sexy. He's like, oh, you could be like my little brother, cute.
Can I go to dude that has a PhD? Look, advanced degrees to break this down. Dr. Metzler, look, we're avoiding all innuendos. This is an innuendo-less Red and Black. For those of you that didn't get the memo, it's an innuendo-less red and black. Do not put it in the chat room. There will be some type of coupon code that will come up and say, we cannot authorize your innuendo this week. So with that said, Dr. Metzler, try your best to explain this, but I know you're probably going to try to slide an innuendo in there anyway.
No, well, look, actually, I don't really care about any of this. What I do care about is tonight I'm going to announce on this show the Negroest man alive. That would be our own Jeff Charles. And so I am moving forward. I think we should eliminate that, and every year we should have the Negroest man alive. And again, that would be our own Jeff Charles.
Yeah, we got
exactly.
Hold on. I know we have like real serious things we're supposed to talk about because we're supposed to be a serious show. Look, Jeff Charles was deemed the CEO of Carlton Conservatives, especially after his appearance on Fox News earlier this week. So now that
y'all didn't even watch.
And this is what gets offensive. I'm the one that wears the coat jacket every week. I'm actually trying to get the freaking title and he gets it by default. I don't know again if I should be offended or just defer to you, honorable CEO of Carlton Conservatives. What say you, sir?
But that was a dig, though. You didn't say CEO. You said honorable CEO, as if he ain't the real CEO. See, that was a bit of shade.
That was shade. I felt that shade. But if you want to be the CIO, if you want to be the CIO
that's like
of Carlton Conservatism, then I can make that happen.
That's right.
Folks, this is what happens when you have to work with the big timers and do all the Fox News wah stuff between Dr. Metzler and Jeff. Melanie and I on the left-hand side of the screen, we keep to ourselves. We kind of stay humble, keep it low-key. You see what the big dogs do, the show-offs, the A-listers.
Oh, don't be talking about Melanie keeping it low-key. Newsmax, hey.
Okay.
Right,
that is true. That is true. And she had a whole big old glass of wine over there that she started the show with. So in the pre-show. So you all can see how far down it has gone. I should be drinking after dealing with these three. I'm going to tell you who else should be drinking. And we need to get into this because we're going to run out of time talking about Ant-Man. Without innuendos, by the way. A person that either should be drinking or is just kicking their feet up and is like chilling, like whatever you're going to do is whatever you're going to do, is Steve Bannon. So news came in late in the week that he's been indicted. Apparently the plan is, and I'm going to go to the legal scholar on this first, so that's going to be Dr. Metzler. The plan apparently is that he's going to turn himself in on Monday after not acquiescing to what the committee was asking for weeks on end. It just kind of seems odd that he's going to take this path. How is this going to end up playing out, Doc?
Well, he has two choices. He can turn himself in or be arrested. Those really are the only two choices he had. Look, Steve made a critical mistake here. Here's what he should have done. What he should have done is he should have shown up, given very vague answers, being very elusive, and therefore it would not have been possible for them to charge him with contempt. He made a critical tactical mistake. But again, Steve is playing to one audience. It is an audience of one. He's playing to Donald Trump. And by the way, his indictment means that, in fact, Mark Meadows will be next, because justice now is saying, okay, you don't show up, we're going to indict you. He can spend up to a year in jail and $100,000 fine. So there we have it.
Melanie, you're watching all this playing out. You're watching all this playing out, right? And you see that after playing chicken with the Department of Justice, you know that, you know, obviously you don't have Donald Trump in the White House anymore. So this is an adversarial administration. You know, what's the win here for Steve Bannon? What's the win for the pro-Trump contingent that's still pushing back on the Justice Department?
I'm not positive what the win is, but I'm confident of a couple of things. Steve Bannon is not a stupid man. I'm certain that whoever Steve Bannon's lawyers are also not stupid people. So I have to think that there is an end game. And the same goes for Mark Meadows. And as a matter of fact, I would say even more so with Mark Meadows. So maybe.
Uh-oh.
Ooh.
You cut her off. That's deep state stuff. That's deep state stuff.
That's
Jeff,
China.
I'm gonna let you talk first. Wow. Go ahead. But apparently she said something that caused a tripwire, and there she went.
Well, hopefully I don't make the same mistake. But I mean, when it comes to Steve Bannon, I'm not really a fan of his. But I mean, I can understand why he would be hesitant to acquiesce to this, like you said. And Dr. Metzler, yeah, you're right. I mean, this is an audience of one. He is doing this for Trump. But the reality of this whole thing is that this whole House committee, I'm sorry, I don't buy its validity. I don't believe that they're actually trying to find out what happened on January 6th, because I think we already know most of what happened on January 6th. At the end of this investigation, which will probably happen maybe 6 months before the midterms, or maybe after that, they're not going to reveal any information related to January 6th that we don't already know. And there might be some few details here and there, but there's not going to be anything major. There's no evidence that this was coordinated or planned beforehand, or that Bannon had anything to do with it at all. What they're fishing for is any information that they can use to damage Trump and Republicans politically, even if it has nothing to do with January 6th. They're looking for ammo to work with. They're looking for something that they can mold into political weapons to use against Republicans. This isn't really about January 6th. I'm sorry. I know that this might not be popular, but it isn't. The FBI has already investigated it. There's already been other congressional investigations. This is just for purely for political purposes, which is funny because they criticize Republicans for doing the same thing with Benghazi. So now here they are doing it because really they don't have much to run on anymore. Biden has been an abject failure, even in his first year in office. Democrats have not passed a whole lot of significant legislation. I know they got this infrastructure thing going on. It ain't going to be enough. So I can see why they're doing this. They're going to milk this thing for all it's worth. And I don't know where it's going to lead to, but I don't think it's really going to do much.
Melanie, go right ahead. You got cut off by Big Brother Biden, apparently jumped on
right?
the red and cut you off.
That was crazy. That was crazy. No, I agree with what Jeff just said, but I do think that Bannon and Mark Meadows have an end game here. I find it very hard to believe that they were like, I'm just not going to show, and not thinking about, okay, how is this going to progress forward? And I'm sure that in their minds, it's not going to progress with them going to jail for Donald Trump. I don't see it.
Well, it's not. People have gone to jail for Donald Trump.
Well, except for the fact, one of the things that we have to look at is the venue. This trial is going to take place in the District of Columbia. Okay, so we have to look at the venue. We have to look at the jury pool. We have to look at all of that. It's just like people are saying that the DC Circuit Court of Appeals, every Trump's request to avoid presenting the papers that were requested. People are so excited about that. I am not. Here's why. The 3 judges who will be hearing the case, 2 were appointed by Obama. 1 is Biden's appointment. And guess what? Should he have a vacancy, he is going to put her on the court. This is the DC Court of Appeals. So again, we have to look at all of these kinds of things. And I think from the Justice Department's perspective and from the District of Columbia's AG's perspective. The issue was, we can't say that you can be in contempt of Congress. That's their view. Again, I expedition. I am just wondering why Steve did not play this much more strategically. Had he simply shown up, been very vague, avoided the questions, they could not have even indicted him for contempt of Congress.
He might have been concerned about even appearing to cooperate because of that audience of one that you were talking about. So even if he did go and didn't really give them anything,
and
he
that
might think
is
that
exactly
that
the problem.
The impression that, oh, well, he still cooperated, even though it's not true. You know how Trump is. So that might be why.
Yeah.
Kind of weird that he's willing to risk jail time for that, though. I mean,
that goes to a point that a lot of people that are very anti-Trump always talk about. What's the allure of this dude that would make somebody make this type of miscalculation legally to just stay on his good side? I mean, let's just be honest. He could run as the 2024 candidate for president, but the truth of the matter is the animus against Trump is still out there. You would see almost the same exact, in some instances, political and electoral processes play out in 2024, because nothing brings people to the polls for and against Donald Trump than Donald Trump. So if you're looking at that, you're not gaining from him getting back into the White House. He's not running for something in 2022. We've already seen that the Trump playbook doesn't play for other candidates. So what is the allure that would make somebody make this type of miscalculation and risk jail time? We've seen this over and over again. What is it?
I think it might be. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it might be the fact that whether he's running or not in 2024, he is still seen as the leader of the party. And one thing that I have seen about Bannon is that he even before Trump, he will kind of glom on to a politician or a leader that he can kind of run with. And, in that way, he remains relevant. So I think that he sees Trump. I think that Trump is that to him. So I think that might be why he's doing it, because Trump is still seen as the leader of the party, even throughout the midterms. Now, that may change, but I think that that's what he might be after.
Go ahead, Melanie, but Steve Bannon's been in the weeds. We've said Trump a lot recently. We haven't said Steve Bannon a whole lot in quite some time.
That's true, and that's why I just tend to believe that there's an end game here. I find it hard to believe that he and Mark Meadows are this dumb.
Give me a theory of what that end game is. By the way, we continue these Marvel references. I think this is pretty cool. Gives me a chance to say Ant-Man. But go ahead.
No one wants to date a dude named Ant-Man. Just saying.
If you make it feel better, he's also known as Giant Man too.
I'll say Giant Man.
I bet you will.
Where did it go?
Yeah, you see how quickly Lenny left? He didn't want to be a part of that conversation.
Lord.
Listen, you can't just lob that softball over the plate and expect me to just ignore it.
That's exactly why I did it.
You know she's delaying because she forgot her train of thought. We were talking about Steve Bannon, not Ant-Man and shrinking and growing. This is not a Seinfeld episode, by the way.
As far as I know, Steve Bannon is successful in his own right. He's got this cool radio show with millions of listeners. He's a political consultant that's pretty good at what he does. This is why I don't think that he's that dumb, especially when you couple that with the fact that Mark Meadows is doing the same thing. I have to think that this is their strategy. I just don't know enough about the legal game to figure out what it is. But maybe I'm wrong.
I'm going to throw it out there before we transition on, because we got all kind of court stuff going on this week. Good Lord. Every time you think that the country be like, okay, Thanksgiving's coming, everybody will calm down. The universe says, no, I'm going to give you Steve Bannon getting indictment. I'm going to give you the Arbery case in Rittenhouse. Here you go. So before we get to the other two, Dr. Metzler, what could possibly be the strategy to get out of this mess?
Well, if I were Steve Bannon's lawyer, I would make the argument, and in fact, remember, Bannon was pardoned by the president, and so my argument essentially would be, look, you can't even bring this prosecution because he was previously pardoned by the president, and in fact, that pardon covers this. How successful that argument would be, I don't know. I don't think they would take kindly to that. And remember, Steve's had a somewhat contentious relationship. Remember, he was fired previously from the Trump White House. So there's that issue as well. Look, at the end of the day, again, I think you're right, Jeff. They don't want to at least have the appearance of cooperating. I would have advised a different strategy. I just legally, I don't see it. What they may do is just try to delay and delay and delay so that you get to midterms, the Republicans win control of the House and shut down the entire investigation. That may be the end game. And this may be just another delay tactic. So it's a mix of law and politics in this particular case.
All right, I'm going to transition on. Go ahead, Melanie.
No, I was going to say Dr. Messler has a point because it typically takes longer for them to bring charges against someone for something like that. The DOJ acted uncharacteristically quickly in this particular case.
I'm going to let that rest there because we got some other unrest coming up. And Jeff, I'm going to go to you first, and I'm going to show you an image that I want you to respond to because there has not been a neutral reaction when you talk about this. So when you see that face right there from earlier this week from Kyle Rittenhouse, you go to social media, you go into the punditry, it's one or the other. It's either this dude's going to get an Oscar or, can't you feel for this kid? What say you? And I'm gonna put up another image as well because when everybody saw this image, they kind of forgot about the other image. So let's talk about what we saw first in court and how you're feeling this case is going to start playing out.
So here's my thing. And usually with these issues, I can see both sides. I can look at whatever arguments and I can kind of understand what other people have come from. I can't do that with this. There is not a single person who thinks that this was fake. And I am including the people who are saying it's fake, the ones who are claiming that. They know that this isn't fake and they're lying about it. They want to demonize this kid because it's political. They don't care anything about the people that died. They don't care about the trauma that he's going through. This is purely political. Any sane person could see that reaction and see that he was having a freaking panic attack. It's obvious. It is 100% obvious he was having a panic attack. Even if you think he's in the wrong, the fact that you're pretending that it's fake just so you can cast him as some type of serial killer or monster is incorrigible. Like, to me, even if you shoot and kill somebody in self-defense, that is still going to mess with your head. And he's going to be dealing with that, hopefully not, but probably for the rest of his life. That's PTSD right there. And any sane, like I said, any sane and honest person can see that. So to me, it just kind of shows how depraved these people are. Because, like I said, even if you disagree with what he did and you think he was guilty, there was a humanity there that they were trying to erase because they don't want people to see him as human. And the reason they don't want people to see him as human isn't because they care whether he was right or wrong or not. It's because he shot Black Lives Matter or George Floyd protesters. They weren't even black. But that is the reason why they want to dehumanize this kid. And that is the only reason why. If you flip the situation around, exact same circumstances, and it's a Black Lives Matter protester who shot some crazy MAGA people in self-defense, they would be singing his praises. They would not have the same attitude. And to me, this is just the prime example of how sick our politics has become. This right here is an example of that. So to me, you can miss me with the whole, it was fake thing. Nope, nobody believes that, and you don't believe it either.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm not going to tell you if I believe he was acting or not because that seems to miss the point. I want to bring up another point, which is this. When you look at those images that I brought up and you compare it with this image here, is that not part of what Americans are struggling with, particularly those that feel like he's guilty, he needs to go to jail and everything else? It's the fact that the first time we saw him, he was a 17-year-old that crossed state lines with that gun and shot people. So they're seeing that image and then an image of a teenager, same teenager, going through a life-changing experience once again within a relatively short period of time. And with a traumatized society from a pandemic, the 2020 election, race relations, and everything else, they can't compartmentalize it the way you just did.
Well, they can, but they choose not to, right? I mean, these are not dumb people. They know how to compartmentalize, because, like I said, if the situation were reversed, they'd be doing all kinds of compartmentalizing. What I see in that picture is a dumb kid who had no business being there, and that I do agree with. And I know some conservatives don't like that. No, he had no business being there. I don't know what his mom was thinking, letting him go. It was absurd. If I would have done that at 17 years old, I don't even think I'd be here today, not because of them, but because of my mom. She probably would have killed me. That's ridiculous. So yeah, I do agree that he shouldn't have been there. He had the gun illegally, but that does not give people the right to attack him. And yes, they did attack first, according to the witness there. So he did defend himself. And I think, there's plenty of blame to go around, but I don't think they're going to get him on murder, because what the evidence is showing is that it was a clear case of self-defense. I don't know if they'll get him on the gun charge. I don't even know if they charged him with the gun, but still, it was a bad idea to show up there in the first place, but he still had the right to defend himself.
Dr. Metzler, what say you? I know you're going to probably take a little bit of a legal angle. You're going to take a little bit of a societal angle, but we got one hell of a contrast this week between this kid breaking down on the stand and that image that we saw last year. And that you don't usually see that wide of a range from the same person, let alone a kid that's not even 20 years old yet.
Well, you would see it and be able to understand it if you had competent prosecutors. My God, is Wisconsin now going to reconsider allowing people to enter the bar? Wisconsin Law School, you don't take to have trial advocacy courses this way. All of a sudden, the prosecution says, oh, by the way, we want to include lesser included charges. Okay, what that tells me is, you have already lost the case. If what the prosecution was going to do was to take that image and to argue he had no business being there and keep it that way, then they would have had a better chance of getting something. At this point, I'd be surprised if they got anything. This is pure and simple prosecutorial misconduct. They can blame it on the judge. They can talk about his food, his joke about Asian food and all of that kind of stuff. All that's irrelevant. The fact of the matter is, the prosecution in this case did not tell a story. How do you have your own witnesses undermine you? In this particular case, if you wanted to prosecute this as he's a menace to society, he had no business being there. His mother should never have allowed him to be there. That's not his community, all of that. Fine. And in fact, you didn't even need to try that. You could have pled that out. This was political. It is a debacle, and it is an absolute shame.
Well, you know what, Melanie? Here's one thing further. Take it a step further than what Dr. Metzler said, especially in an odd-numbered year. When everybody pays attention to the governors and the presidents and the senators and the congressmen and the mayors getting elected, it's the DAs that lead to these type of situations, that when you have debacles going back, at least over the last 10 years, going back to George Zimmerman and other high-profile cases that people get angry about, and you go to what Dr. Metzler's talking about, which is what the hell was the DA doing? What are they talking about? Why are they all over the place? Why is the case all scattered? I'm not an attorney. I just stayed at a Holiday Inn last night, and I know not to ask that question. I mean, this is another example of that. Let's ignore the legal jargon, and let's just go to the fact that you have to put yourself as a community in a better position so that if something like this transpires, you don't have this. Because the bottom line is, between this and the case down in Georgia, if these go a particular way, we might be facing yet another Tinderbox here in America.
That's true. But in my opinion, and I'm no legal scholar for sure, none of that is relevant to that kid's rights. He made, from a parental perspective, yeah, my kid wouldn't have been down there. Have no business down there. A very dangerous situation. You shouldn't have been there. But legally, he had a right to be there. He was there helping out. By the way, my understanding is that his dad lives in the Kenosha. So there is an argument to be made that that's his community. His dad lives there. He was there visiting his dad. And I also, at least as far as the reporting that I've seen, what?
The irony of his dad lives there. I just thought of Trayvon Martin since I just brought up George Zimmerman. It just the delicious irony of that. But go ahead.
I've been seeing people talking about that.
Well, I'm saying when my mom and dad weren't together anymore, and I went to visit my dad and was outside playing and hanging out in the neighborhood, I considered that to be like my second home. So I don't see a distinction there if his dad lived there and he wanted to protect the community. I'm totally fine with that. But now, from a parental standpoint, should my 17-year-old be in a place where people are rioting? Probably not. Probably a bad idea. But he had every right to be there. We can say morally and parentally, yeah, he shouldn't have been there. But that is not a legal argument that he shouldn't have been there. That, at least, Dr. Metzler would know better than I would, but it doesn't sound like a legal argument to me. And it sounds irrelevant to whether or not he shot those people in self-defense. And from what I understand, he didn't bring that gun across state lines. He borrowed that gun from a friend.
Well, he came across state lines. He came across state lines to participate. That's established.
Well, so here's the thing. Well, but yeah, so here's the issue. The issue is the prosecution first needed to decide whether there was a case here to prosecute, and if it was, what was it? Was it an assault charge? Was it a weapons charge? Whatever. They needed to decide that. They did not. Instead, they overcharged him. Look, someone is throwing a dumpster towards you. You have the right to defend yourself. What the prosecution failed to do is to put forth coherent legal arguments. Instead, what they did is put together a number of fairy tales laced with I don't know what. And at this point, I'm sitting there saying, okay, why are you charging him? What is the charge and why? He has the right. And here's the problem. The standard in Wisconsin is so high relative to what the prosecution even brought this. This is something in which they should have brought his lawyers in and said, listen, here's the situation. Here's his age. Let's do that. But instead, they wanted to grab the headlines. The prosecutor, in fact, sits there with his hand over his face. Dude, you look like a complete ass. And at this
I couldn't blame him on that one, though.
That's how you want to go down. It is your career that's going down in flames. Oh, yeah. I mean, at that point, you out. Did you not talk to them beforehand? Why'd you put them on the stand? So in this particular case, this is completely overcharging. It is completely ignoring the rights that he has. And if you believe that those who are not the rights, then what's your argument? I didn't see that anywhere in this. Instead, I just saw a bunch of mumbo jumbo. And keep arguing with that judge. Listen, when a judge tells me, you have made me angry, dude, Your Honor, I apologize. Instead, you're going back and forth with him. And, I thought he was going to be like, let me take off my earrings. What you unbelievable disrespect for the judge. So there you have it.
Jeff, I want to bring back something that I was talking about before when it goes to elections matter, particularly these local elections. This is something that, for those of the folks that are listening to Sunny's Corner later on today, this is something she talks about. It's something we've talked about over the years, those of us that have been in a pungency as Black conservatives. Jeff, I don't know the history of this DA, but these type of situations usually lend themselves to politicians getting prosecutorial positions based on elections, and then they get into a situation like this, and they don't know how to prosecute a case because the person that got elected to the office has prosecuted 3 cases in their 20-year career, but they're a career politician. And I don't know the history of this DA, but I would not be shocked one bit if that were the case, because you see cases like this where politicians get themselves caught up in something and they get jammed up. They look like Chris Darden in the 1990s.
I honestly think that this is why they brought the case in the first place, to kind of answer Dr. Metzger's question. I think that they were probably afraid of being called racist or being or not looking good politically if they didn't bring this case and at least try to convict him of something. Maybe that's why they overcharged him. I mean, we just talked about Trayvon Martin a second ago. That's what I think happened there. I think they wanted the guy to get out, so they overcharged him, knowing that they were going to lose the case. I think that might be happening here, although I think in this case it's a little bit different because it'd be very hard to convict him of any type of murder or whatever because of the self-defense angle. And in this case, it's very hard to disprove the idea that he did what he did to defend himself because all of the evidence points to that. And that's why that prosecutor had that moment. I can't blame him because that guy straight up said, yeah, he could have just said, he was totally defending himself. I was trying to shoot him. He might as well have just said that, because I think that kind of sealed the deal here. I was a little concerned when they put Rittenhouse on the stand, but I think that went okay. So I do think that this whole thing was political get-go. If this had just been a situation where it didn't involve Black Lives Matter or Antifa, or let's just say this is just a group of guys who chased this kid down and he shot them, we would never be hearing about this. And I doubt that they would even bring charges against him. So again, this is 100% politics, and this is like the depressing part of politics. This is sick. This is very sick that we're only caring about this for political reasons. It's sick that our viewpoints are being influenced by politics. And I'm going to call it the left on this one because they're the ones who are guilty in this aspect. Usually it's both, but in this case, it is the left who is playing politics with this. Again, they don't care about the details of the case. They don't care whether he was justified or not. They care about pushing a political narrative, and it's disgusting.
So speaking of chasing down, because I couldn't help but hear that, that's a wonderful segue over to the Arbery case in Georgia. And so now you have that trial going on at the same exact time that the Rittenhouse case is going on in the other end of the country. And Melanie, I'm going to go to you first on this. The more you hear, it's almost like they're trying to manufacture a case perhaps of, okay, well, there was stuff going on a property, but he wasn't necessarily there. And well, we heard some instances in between that and the issue of how the jury was selected and all the issues with the South and in this county. How are you looking at this case developing? One, in and of itself, the case. Two, in the shadow of the Rittenhouse case. Three, in the shadow of we're still dealing with January 6th. We're still dealing with all these other things going on in the country. It's hard to believe that all this stuff transpired in the same 18-month period of time that has also involved the pandemic.
Right? Like what pandemic? You almost forget that, like, by the way, we're in the middle of a pandemic.
Well, you know
while all
what?
this
You know
stuff
what
is
makes
going
you
on.
forget about.
I'm in
You
Texas.
know
We
what
don't have a
ends up
pandemic here.
Well, you know what ends up helping you forget about a pandemic, right? Remembering that Ant-Man is the sexiest man alive. It helps us all sleep at night, I guess. Well, maybe some
Any
more than others.
dude whose nickname is in any way, shape, or form Ant-Man is totally forgettable. Trust me.
Can you answer the question I initially asked you? Ignore my sarcasm, please. What do you think about the case in Georgia?
You know, I'm going to tell you that the Arbery case is very concerning. The fact that they didn't bring charges initially against these guys, like it took them a while to bring charges against these guys. It makes you wonder, like, what the motive was. The whole situation seems really sketchy. Why was the one guy recording it? Why were you making a citizen's arrest? What's up with people thinking they can make a citizen's arrest? Call the cops. That's what the cops are there for. Like, what are you doing? And now, since the Arbery case, they have reversed that citizens arrest law that they had apparently. But it's, you know, I'm conflicted because, you know, you see a black man running from a construction site. You got these three white men, so you're automatically going to make a lot of assumptions. And I don't like the fact that we make a lot of assumptions about a situation based on the color of people's skin, black, white, or otherwise. It's really bothersome. So I don't know. And anytime there's a situation where there's a scuffle over a gun, somebody's probably going to get shot. But what do you do when somebody pulls a gun on you? Hopefully, I'll never have to find out. I don't know, but it's a mess.
An alleged scuffle, number one. Number two, you have the whole pursuit aspect of it, Dr. Metzler, which is number two. The citizen's arrest, number three. The problematic backstories with these guys, number four. It's all a little bit fishy, and yet when you try to take race out of it because you don't want to make assumptions, to Melanie's point, you look at how the defense attorneys took off potential black jurors. You look at the county that they're in. You look at the fact that they weren't, arrested immediately for this, and you're like, okay, I'm trying to take race out of this, but it's really, really, really hard.
So a couple of things. First of all, as to black men running from a construction site, in many of the homes that I've renovated, black people, white people, everybody during renovation generally go by the house. And frankly, I've done that myself. That's number one. Number two, so let's give some context and some background here. Context and background, number one, the former prosecutor on this case was involved in many extra professional relationships with the guys in this case. And this is why the case was not brought immediately. Number one, jury selection. For the judge to say, yes, I know you're striking people because they are black, but that's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and let you do it, presents a significant problem. Number three, for the defense attorney to get up there and say, we don't need any more black ministers in here, and then try to apologize today for having said that because he offended people. That's not even the point. You got Reverend Sharpton sitting in the back bench at the courthouse. How is he intimidating the family? You can't even see him. You can't. So in this particular case, as someone who's done a lot of this work, as someone who's done a lot of this work, there are significant racial issues here that have to be interrogated. Because this jury selection piece from the beginning is problematic. But here's the thing, people, I heard somebody say, well, the prosecution can take that up on appeal. Boo, prosecution doesn't get to appeal. That's not how the system works. Once there is a verdict, that's it. The defense is the only person who gets to appeal. The prosecution had an obligation to challenge the judge at that time, and they did not. So there you have it.
Dr. Messler, there's nothing worse.
Say that again? I didn't hear
that. Well, I'm going to say it because it's all good. There's nothing worse than when a guy's trying to make a point about a civil rights activist and they call Al Sharpton Jesse Jackson or vice versa. You know they're lumping everybody together. And if you go read the quote from the attorney, like, look, we have no Jesse Jacksons in here. And it's like, what? You know, Al Sharpton, this big, wavy hair.
They don't even look.
James Brown and he were conking back in the day. They don't even look the same. So you know, it's like, okay, oh, it's just you want to stick your fingers in your ears, Jeff, when you hear this stuff, and you're like, man, I can't wait to get out of 1968. And you're like, well, wait a minute, we're in what year?
You know, I couldn't believe that when I saw that. You know, I saw a tweet about it and where they quoted him in a tweet, and I was like, there's no way he said that. Because, you know, there's a lot of BS on Twitter. People will just make stuff up, even though the video's there. Like, there's no way he said that. There's absolutely no way he said that. I clicked on the video.
Yeah.
And I was like, this mother, he said what he said. And I love people trying to clean it up. Oh, well, he just didn't want a whole lot of pastors in there because it'd get too crowded. No, it was just Al Sharpton. He's one person and he sat in the back. Who cares? I don't even like Al Sharpton. But if the family wants him there, he has every right to be there. If he wants to comfort them, that's a good thing. I have nothing against that. So for this guy to, and what's funny is that he didn't even know Al Sharpton was there until afterwards when somebody told him. So now he's like, oh, I don't want these Negro pastors up. And he's like, what kind of moron are you? And then with the whole jury selection, my thing is, why did the prosecution let that happen? Like, why did they let them just blatantly strike black jurors from the jury? Maybe they were confident that they could win. I could kind of see that, because one of the things about this case, and I think one of the reasons why it's not getting as much attention as Rittenhouse, is because pretty much everybody agrees about it. Conservatives, liberals, they all agree. Yeah, you still got some dweebs on the right who are pretending like Ahmaud Arbery was engaged in illegal activity, even though there's no evidence. You still got people pretending like he was wearing work boots and had a hammer. That's very few and far in between. The majority of conservatives and people on the left agree that these people need to go down. So maybe the prosecution just thought, you know what, I just want to get this trial going. Let's just let it be what it's going to be. I think we're still going to win, but still, that's still wrong. And then one more thing, really quick. The whole thing about when the incident first happened, and you know, when Dr. Mesh was talking about how they didn't get arrested, honestly, I don't think they ever intended to charge these men. I don't think that they ever intended to charge them. No, they didn't. The only reason they charged them is because that video came out.
They did not.
That it did. Because they would have been scot-free.
You know, and so when you sit there and you say, well, no, maybe they felt they were going to win. I got 2 points on that. Number one, this goes back to what I was saying before. People don't usually pay attention to DA races. Why? Because they're not sexy. And so somebody's cousin that wants to become the DA, to eventually run for state house, to eventually run for Congress or become a governor or something, that's how they get in. So you get these folks that may or may not have the experience to you know, hit the alarm and say, no, you don't get to strike them on race. You know, there are these laws called, I don't know, this whole big movement called the Civil Rights Movement that we took care of this 50, 60 years ago. You don't get to do this. That's number one. Number two, in regards to the height of confidence that, well, everybody agrees that this is going to work out because there's evidence on this, I take you back to one state north of Georgia, and I go back to South Carolina and the Walter Scott case, where we watched a police officer say, he struggled for my gun. And then this cell phone video comes out where he's shooting the dude from behind as he's running away. He still did not get convicted of a state crime. So let's be real. This is America. We have seen too many times where people that should be convicted don't get convicted, even with video evidence. I won't even go back to Rodney King because, you know, we're 30 years past Rodney King. We all saw that and then saw Los Angeles burn down 10 months later after that case. So the confidence aside, we're running a very interesting risk, Dr. Metzler. I'm going to go around the horn real quick before we get out of here, where these cases, again, can be the tinderbox, and that should not be the parameter or the prompting of whether a case goes guilty or innocent. But let's be honest, if these two cases go the wrong way and all this other stuff gets ginned up into another election season, granted it's not a presidential year, but it's still a big election year, we could have one hell of a year all over again next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, prosecutors need to do their jobs. This is a very big problem, like you all were discussing earlier. The prosecutor in the district attorney should never himself or herself try the case. Let the career prosecutors do it. Let the ones who do it every day, let them do it, because in that elected position, it is all theoretical. You look at Keith Ellison, who is the Attorney General of Minnesota. Keith don't try no cases because Keith can't try cases. He understands that. He needs to let the folks do their job. And so I do agree that, in fact, if we don't get this together, folks are going to be up in arms.
No pun intended. That was a very bad analogy to use, considering we talked about Rittenhouse. But to your point,
yes, I know it is. It was intentional.
Yeah, I figured it was. I know you, Melanie. I told you no innuendos, by the way, and yet you broke the rule. Melanie, real quick, what say you?
Darn it.
What say me about which?
The tinderbox.
Oh, well, yeah, I agree. It shouldn't be, the part that bothers me about these cases is that we're basing it on, how the public is going to react. And let's just keep it real. We're really not talking about the public. We're talking about these far left-wing activists is what we're talking about. And here's a crazy idea. Maybe when they get out there and burn stuff down and not peacefully protest, they should go to jail too, because they're breaking the law.
Those weren't far lefties on January 6th. The whole country went crazy last year.
And they're going to jail. But not one person who was involved in that riot where Kyle Rittenhouse was there. None of them went to jail for all the tearing up and destruction that they committed. Nobody was going to jail from that insurrection.
Some people went to jail, but the point is,
there were a lot of people went to jail.
Pardon me? What'd you say, Jeff?
I was saying,
Jeff said a lot of people went to jail.
Well, you saw what Big Brother did once again. That wasn't me. But and let me say this before we wrap up the show: the country lost its mind last year. It was left and right. It was black and white. I mean, we have seen people get really, really froggy when it comes to racism, a lot more over the last 18 months than we've seen in a long time. And so, Jeff, I'm going to go back to you before we get out of here. What I was saying was, both sides of America politically, both sides of, or multiple sides of America culturally, lost their minds. And this tinderbox is not just going to come for the left or the right if these cases go the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really worried about that with Ahmaud Arbery, but I am concerned about it with Kyle Rittenhouse, because I do think he's going to be acquitted. I think he should be. But we know how the left operates with this. And what's going to be sad is because this whole thing is ostensibly because they supposedly care about black people. This is what I talked about last night on Fox News. Like, these people want to riot and they want to incite this type of violence. They want to burn buildings down. And 100% of the time, it affects black people. Black people are the victims of these riots. It's black men who die in these things. It's black businesses that get burned. So again, this is all about race and politics, but the people who pretend to care about black people are the ones who are going to be killing black people if this goes the wrong way. Now, I hope I'm wrong about that. I hope if they do protest, I hope it's peaceful. But I think that's what's going to happen.
We're gonna wrap up the show from here real quick. Melanie, what you got going on this upcoming week?
I will be back on Newsmax on Monday at 3:30 Eastern Standard Time.
Make sure you tune in. Make sure you tweet her out. Jeff Charles, Fresh Perspective, Mr. Fox News. All of a sudden, what you got going on this week?
Yeah, I'm going to be doing more with my audio podcast. I'm also on my YouTube channel, so check me out at A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles.
Fantastic. Dr. Metzler, what say you? What you got cooking?
I'm continuing my work in the great city of New York.
New York City. That's fantastic. Well, listen, folks, we appreciate you joining this week.
That's my week.
Good stuff. We got a lot of stuff that's going on to pay attention to, which is why we're so glad you join us every week here on Red and Black. Thank you for joining us in chat room. Thank you for tweeting us out. Chat us up, tweet us out. Join us next week. Spread the word. We're out of here. We'll talk to you soon. TCNGB. Take care and God bless. Peace.